Okay, here we are in phase 5 of coding Canon 2. In this video, what we're going to be doing is creating the HudItem class. Now, we've got a game item class, which was necessary for game items, things that had velocity, things that moved around the screen. Now, with the HudItem, basically, we need two new visual components that are going to exist on the screen. And I'm using component in a very generic sense. We're going to need a display lives and we're going to need a big title screen. So we need these two visual elements that we're going to add into our game, but they're not going to be moving around the screen. They're different. We don't need to worry about finding their centers. So what we're going to do is create a new class that is going to cater to the needs of these two new objects. So this will be our HudItem class. Now, instead of drawing this out for you in Photoshop, it's actually a little bit simpler than the game item class itself. It's going to have a few private data members. It's going to have position. It's going to have texture, width, and height. Position is going to be just that. It's position. The texture, again, is going to be an association with a picture box. And the width and the height is going to be just that, the width and the height of the picture box we're dealing with. And then we've got some public properties. We're going to have position to set position. We've got texture to set texture. And then we've got width and height to set width and height. Okay? And then outside of that, we've got one public method, which is draw, and all that's going to do is take the textures, meaning the picture box, top, left, width, and height, and set all of that information accordingly. So that's it. That is the game class that we're going to put together. Let's go ahead and do it, Logan.
All right. We need to begin a new class, so I'm going to come over to our classes folder and add a new item. And this item is going to be our HudItem. So there we go. We've got a HudItem class. Now, a few things I'm going to address first, and that is the class's namespace. I'm going to just simply strip that off. And we can begin with the data members, but of course we're going to have to look at some using issues. But let me get the first data member in just to show what I'm talking about. First data member is going to be position. So it's going to be a private member. And it's going to be a point. And it is the position. And there we go with the needing the using. Of course, we don't have point defined as a type, so we need references. And since we are going to also be addressing a picture box, we'll need both a reference to system.drawing and system.windows.forms.
So let's just jump on over to game item real quick and steal those two.
We could do that.
Make it real quick.
All right, game item. This is where we added.
There they are.
Windows.forms and drawing. And we'll steal those, drop them in place. Point comes to life, and now we can continue.
Perfect.
All right, next up we've got the private picture box, and it is going to be called the texture. And now we need our width and height. So we have a private integer for width and a private int for height. And I see the misspelling in private, so perfect. There we go.
Okay.
Now we need some properties.
Let's go ahead and set up a region for them.
Alright, let's make a region for properties. And the region. Alright, first property, position. This will be a public property which is of type point for our position. So we'll block in the property. And now first we'll set up the get. So get is going to return our position. And set is going to set our position to whatever the incoming value is. Alright, that should take care of the position. Let me copy this whole property and then paste it a few times for the rest of the properties. So we jump down, we'll have to have a property for texture.
And then width and then height.
So width, height, and that gives us 4 properties.
Okay.
So let's go back and put in the texture. Texture is going to be a picture box type, and it's something called texture.
Let's go ahead and capitalize that T, though.
Right, because otherwise we'll have problems with our internal variables. Now, of course, we want to return and set the texture, so I'll simply copy the texture variable and paste that in, so we have our association with texture, and I didn't select all that. There we go. Returning texture, setting texture.
Okay.
And now we can move on to width and height. So this is going to be a public integer property for width, And then I can do the same where I copy the width variable. And then finally we have our height, which is again going to be an integer called height, where we return our internal height and set our height if necessary.
Alright, very good. So now we've got one public method.
Alright, let me jump below the region for properties. As a matter of fact, let me simply collapse all of our properties.
Alright, very nice.
Now, we need to look at draw. This is going to be a public method. It's not going to return anything. And it is called draw. Now, inside of draw, this is again where we simply take our visual counterpart, our texture in this case, and we set it to wherever it needs to be based on this HUD item. So we need to set its position and its width and height, because width and height are very important for the HUD items, specifically because we have to start shrinking the image down when we start losing lives and chopping lives off the edge of the picture box. So let's code this in. We'll address the texture through this instance of the class. So we'll say this, or this object. So this dot texture dot top is equal to this object's position in X. Now you notice I'm going to set top and left separately here instead of as one point as in the game item class.
Okay, something real quick. I see top and I see X. Generally when I see top, I see Y.
Oh, I see. I like to begin with X though, so I'm going to change this to left.
That makes me feel better. Okay, sorry about that.
That would have been a lot of fun when we were lying across the opposite diagonal when we start doing stuff. But anyway, yeah, good catch. But yeah, anyway, let me jot down the second line, and then I'll say where I was going with the top and left thing. So let's put down our texture dot top and set that to our position dot Y. Now again, I'm setting this on two separate lines. I'm setting left independently from top. And we said that this was a bad thing inside of game item, but that's because game item moves, and we don't want to see it move in left before top. These are HUD items. We're not planning on having the HUD items move around the screen. So the fact that they get set shouldn't matter, because they get set once and then they stay there. Plus this makes the code a little bit more readable because we can keep everything simple. Now we of course have to address the width and height of the picture box. So back to the texture, we'll set its width to be wherever this object's current width is set to. And this dot texture dot height is set to this HUD item's height. And that should wrap up draw. That should have our texture positioned and have its dimensions set with width and height. Okay, and that is going to wrap it up for the HUD item class video. Let's go ahead and build real quick. And everything builds just fine. And that concludes the video. Thanks a lot.